Welcome to EduCasts, home of EduCasters. The exosystem, the trickle-down effect. Now we are moving outward to the exosystem. These are the environments where the child is not present. They don't actively participate in them, but these environments still have a profound impact on their life. This is the indirect stuff. It's the trickle-down effect. The parent's workplace. The heaviest hitter in the exosystem is usually the parent's workplace. A third grader doesn't go to work with their mom. They don't sit in the board meetings or stand on the assembly line, but you better believe that workplace shapes that kid's life. If mom has a boss who is a tyrant, refuses to give her time off for a sick kid, and mandates unpredictable overtime, that stress comes home. That is the exosystem crashing into the microsystem. Mom comes home exhausted and short-tempered. She has less energy to help with homework or read that bedtime story. The economic stability of the house, determined by the workplace, dictates whether there is food in the fridge or Wi-Fi for homework. Conversely, if a parent works for a company with family-friendly policies, flexible hours, paid leave, a living wage, the trickle-down effect is positive. The parent is more present, less stressed, and more emotionally available. The child reaps the benefits of a workplace they have never even visited. School boards and city councils. For educators, the exosystem also includes the school board, the district office, and the city council. Students don't attend school board meetings, usually, but decisions made in those rooms regarding budgets, redistricting, curriculum adoption, and teacher pay determine the quality of the student's education. If the school board decides to cut the arts program to save money, the student who lived for music class suddenly loses their anchor. If the city council decides to rezone a neighborhood or cut funding for public transit, it might change how long it takes a student to get to school, or whether they feel safe walking home. Understanding the exosystem helps teachers develop empathy. When a parent misses a conference, it's not necessarily because they don't care, a microsystem assumption. It might be because their workplace, exosystem, will fire them if they leave early. When we understand the exosystem, we stop taking things personally and start seeing the systemic barriers. The macrosystem, the blueprint of society. The outermost layer is the macrosystem. This isn't a specific place, like a house or an office. It's the cultural blueprint. It includes the dominant beliefs, ideologies, economic systems, laws, and customs of the society in which the child lives. It is the water we swim in, often invisible because it is everywhere. Ideologies and values. In the United States, our macrosystem is heavily influenced by values like individualism, meritocracy, and capitalism. We love the pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative. This shapes our schools. It is why we focus so heavily on individual grades, standardized testing, and competition. Valedictorians, rankings. Compare this to a more collectivist macro system like you might find in parts of Japan or Scandinavia, where the focus might be more on group harmony and social welfare. A child growing up in the U.S. is constantly bombarded with messages about being special, standing out, and achieving personal success. This shapes their self-esteem and their anxiety levels. Policy and law. Federal laws like No Child Left Behind or the Every Student Succeeds Act are macrosystem forces. They set the tone for the entire nation. Issues like systemic racism, poverty, and gender inequality also reside in the macrosystem. If a child grows up in a society that stereotypes their racial group as dangerous or unintelligent, that macrosystem influence filters down through the exosystem, funding for their neighborhood, into the mesosystem, how teachers interact with their parents, and lands squarely in the microsystem, the teacher's low expectations. Bronfenbrenner argued that if you want to make lasting change, you can't just fix the microsystem. You have to address the macrosystem. You have to change the laws, the values, and the cultural narratives. For teachers, this means being aware of the cultural baggage students bring and the cultural bias the school system itself might perpetuate. It's about recognizing that the American dream looks very different depending on your zip code. The chronosystem, time as the fourth dimension. Bronfenbrenner wasn't done yet. He realized that this whole nesting doll situation isn't static. It moves. It changes. So he added the chronosystem, the element of time. Time plays out in a few different ways here. Life transitions, individual time. First, you have the changes in the individual's life, the birth of a sibling, a divorce, moving to a new house, or puberty. These are events that shake up the status quo. A divorce, for example, is a major chronosystem event. It triggers a cascade of changes in the microsystem, living in two houses, the mesosystem, parents maybe not talking, and the exosystem, maybe mom has to get a new job. The impact of divorce on a 4-year-old is different than on a 16-year-old. The timing matters. Historical time. Then you have the big picture historical time. This is where we look at when a child is growing up. A kid growing up during the Great Depression had a fundamentally different developmental trajectory than a kid growing up during the tech boom of the 1990s. The macrosystem values shift over time. The most obvious recent example is the COVID-19 pandemic. This was a massive chronosystem event that rocked every single layer. It shut down microsystems, schools closed. It strained mesosystems, parents became teachers. It highlighted inequalities in the exosystem, essential workers versus remote workers. It shifted the macrosystem, debates about freedom versus public health. We are currently teaching a generation of COVID kids. Their social skills, their academic baselines, and their anxiety levels have all been shaped by this specific point in history. You cannot teach them effectively if you act like 2020 never happened. The chronosystem reminds us that students are products of their specific moment in history.